Okay, hey, welcome. We're trying something new. This is an EMAX users stream. And I want to thank you for joining us because you're probably an EMAX user. There's a whole bunch of things that I want to talk about, like mention first off. If you want to know more stuff about the EMAX, this is the EMAX, the old Yahoo group. What are you talking, you horrible machine? I hate your face. All right, there you go. Um, there's a whole bunch of EMAX related stuff there. Um, the EMAX, and that actually came from the old Yahoo group. They built a website with a whole bunch of resources. There's some fun stuff. The EMAX user group, which is on groups.io, is here. If you want to learn a whole bunch about the EMAX and be around people who are into the EMAX, that is the place to be. Also, the objective of today's exercise is to inspire you to use the EMAX or to use a software version or anything at all to make music, because that's what this is all about. I did a couple of videos about the EMAX that are here that go into editing, placing on the keyboard, a little bit about analog processing and all that jazz. There's a great stream on Wednesday nights. Bochicota! I'm wearing the t-shirt right now. Alex did a bloody excellent. Alex is here with us right now. I'm very honored to have you here, Alex. Did a bloody good video about the EMAX. Go watch it. It's really good. It's really inspiring, and it's a reminder why this machine is going to be rockstar version forever. And the software you need to have with your EMAX is EMXP. And EMXP is going to let you take samples, WAV files, it's PC based, convert them into EMAX, and then get them onto the EMAX. And there's different ways, even if you don't have a Gotek USB, there's a bunch of different ways we can get it onto the EMAX. Okay. I would like to share, and this will become an open conversation to share your experience with the Velocity 2 thing, which is in analog processing. And so the EMAX it's obviously it's got those great filters. So does the EMAX 2, the Emulator 1. And when I say EMAX, I basically mean everything in the EMU family. Here's DJ Loops. Loops, welcome. We're streaming. Good to see your face. The velocity area and the ability to manipulate the sound like an analog synth in this area is fantastic. You can control the frequencies, the filters. Interestingly, velocity, when you hit, you can. I'm going to finish my rant. Okay. I have an EMAX right here. You can do things like increasing the velocity goes to the pitch. And this is really handy for drums. You put a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of velocity to the pitch. So the harder you hit it, the higher the velocity is going to be, just by the smallest amount. It works really well on snare drums because technically the harder you hit a snare drum, the higher the pitch is, very, very slightly. Another thing to assign to this is the filter. So the harder you hit it, the more it opens the filter. But in order for that to work, you also have to turn down the initial filter amount. A great thing you can also do here is, Ivan, good to see your face, is you can apply, assign the actual filter attack and the actual volume attack. So the softer you hit it, the slower it is coming into the amplifying volume, the amplifier envelope or the filter envelope. And this is really cool on drums because if you've got just the one snare sample and you hit it slowly, because it's giving a slight attack, a slightly delayed attack, slower attack, it's going to come into the snare slowly. So it's not going to be that constant thing, because the thing about the EMAX is when you're using it, you're probably going to compress the crap out of it. And therefore, velocity to volume might get a bit lost. If you use pitch, and filter and these wonderful things. It's really excellent fun. Has anybody got experience with this? Do you want to throw in and talk about the analog processing area? Lilith.
I use the EMAX for quite a few things. I learned on the sequencer, but I like this the way you could sample things and modify it, and so I've used that in a lot of death metal projects, and it's a good way to add echo. Say you get a channel that through your pedals and stuff that has nothing on it, and you run the EMAX through it. It's a good way to get some of the craziest sounding echoes out of some of those samples and things like that.
Yes, it is. I'm gonna come back around to some of the things we can do with samples in a little, but thank you for that. What about actual filter? Have anybody got tricks with the filters of an Emax? Tough audience. Okay. Alex, talk to me.
What I think is interesting about the EMAX's place in history is that it came out right before the D50, and the D50 gets a lot of credit for all of these sorts of tricks. Like it has this time variant filter where you can, as your velocity or whatever, can affect the time of the filter, not just, the cutoff or, I think it might not have been, the EMAX might not have been the first sampler to have velocity to filter cutoff or something like that. But these additional tricks, being able to use velocity to slow the attack of the amplifier or the filter, that's a major step towards realism, which at the time was a big part of this thing, right? It's easy for us to look back and with nostalgia and go, oh, we love that the EMAX sounds so gritty and in some ways unrealistic, right? Like that's what makes it cool. But at the time, Emu was definitely pushing forward towards something more like the Emulator 3, where it could be almost like a real simulated orchestra. And this was a major step forward. And I think when it comes to sound design, that's one of those tricks that should be at least in the back of everybody's mind when they're going to make a preset or make a patch is like, hey, I've got that option in there. For so many synths, that's not a thing, velocity to filter attack time, that's crazy, but it's actually a very cool trick. And I think that every time I look at the Emax, it's easy to forget how many little things it can do. They were very clever with the code for the time, and it was very forward thinking. And this is the type of thing that on modern synths sometimes you don't have, a way to route the velocity to filter attack time or to amplifier attack time. And like you were saying on drums, it's small amounts is probably key. I think a lot of times people they see a feature like that and they're like, all right, let's turn it all the way on and see what it does. And that is usually not a recipe for a sound that you're going to enjoy playing. But subtle amounts of that, yeah, that can really elevate something like a strings patch to where if you play quietly, now that filter has a little bit more time to breathe. I think that's a really fantastic thing. So just my
Mm,
2 cents.
thank you. That is so like on par that yeah, like you said, the slow attack, bringing it in slowly. Another fun trick, Rob, I'll throw to you in just a sec, is that when you have you might have the same sound on primary and secondary, so you've got the same sound, lay it up on each other. You might detune one of them by 3 cents and put a slight delay on it. That's the great thing. If when you have the same sound, you detune one, throw one hard left, throw one hard right, and it is the biggest version of that sound you've heard in your life. But let's say we pan them both dead center. On the secondary one, we're going to apply the velocity to, and this is a bass sound that loops. We're going to apply the velocity to the pitch, the tiniest amount. So the harder you hit it, the more it's going to go out of tune and the more fatter it's going to be. And when you do that with strings and basses and synths, it just starts screaming. Rob, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is curious for me because looking at the velocity to filter Q, which is ideal for percussive, I'm getting the idea that I haven't plugged my electronic drum kit into the EMAX before to try velocity to filter Q. That sounds really interesting. I don't know if anyone's ever connected a drum machine to the EMAX through MIDI and had sticks or tap pads with velocity as opposed to the key bed. Curious as to who's played with that before.
Done it. I was in a cyberpunk band in the 90s, and we had an EMAX originally, then we went to a K2000. The EMAX was way grittier. Like, it's got a really big sound. But if you want to get that Depeche Mode Violator sound, you are assigning velocity to resonance and also velocity to filter. And an interesting point is that the different operating systems of the EMAX have and Alex, you might need to correct me if I'm wrong on this. Some of them will say the velocity is assigned to the overall frequency amount. The older versions of the operating system will say the velocity is assigned to the amount of the envelope that's going into the filter. On the later versions that have SE, it's attached to the hard filter, the big knob filter itself. But yeah, Rob, absolutely. And when you start throwing, I'm going to talk about controls and stuff in a minute, but when you start, really utilizing this thing, oh, honey, it's a wet dream. Lithia, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts on this?
I'll be brief, but yeah, you can hook your ring modulator up to the drum machine and then up to the EMAX and make some pretty brutal noises.
Thank you. That's a great idea. Does anybody else, Rob, I see your hand is up. Talk to me.
Yeah, my brain is buzzing now because I've not done any of this before. So you mentioned the controllers with pressure. What do you use for that?
Oh, baby. And Alex, feel free to jump in on this one as well. So we can talk about the preset definition 6. Hold on, I'm lying. Is it 9? Yeah, 9. So in 1987, this was rudimentary. No other, I don't think any other sampler did this. I should have a picture of a fucking EMAX on my screen so I can just refer to it. You can assign 2 controllers, 2 wheels, and pressure, and the analog digital input on the back, which incidentally, you can run modular gear into that input because it's looking from 0 to plus 10 volts. Don't run negative into it, like don't run an LFO because you might crash it. Although I'm not sure about that, but my Jedi Master bloody repair guy said they might not respond well to negatives. As far as pressure or aftertouch, it has to come from a keyboard that is an aftertouch keyboard because, as Alex pointed out, correct me if I'm wrong, the EMAX keyboard is not doesn't have pressure, doesn't have aftertouch. But you can throw that to the filter. I think you can throw it to the resonance. You can throw it to panning, you can throw it to volume, you can throw it to the LFO as it applies to the volume or the filter. You can't control the LFO amount. However, you can run another control voltage into the AD, the pedal input. That is it might be like a recurring coming out of a maths or something. That's just a 0 to plus something voltage. And this is where the EMAX starts to scream with what you can do on that synth. It's absolutely madness.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't look up to see what pressure was, but aftertouch makes sense. And I have used the Novation 49 SL Mark 49, whatever it is, Mark 3, whatever, which has got aftertouch on there before. And I probably haven't set up that already because I didn't look into pressure before. So that's going to be interesting to give that a whirl. But I'm really interested in using the drum kit to drive MIDI into the EMAX and see how that velocity to filter Q works out. That's got my brain buzzing now.
Okay. I'm something else I want to bring up later is the super mode or S mode, which is most users don't know about this. It's like, oh my God. And also using the EMAX as a sequencer, you can do it. It's amazing, but somebody needs to teach me how to use that fucking arpeggiator because I can't work well, I can work it out, but there's a whole bunch of issues with it. Alex, talk to me.
I wanted to just ask a question because I don't know the answer to this one. For a lot of the CPUs that came from like the mid 80s, they can only handle so much MIDI information at one time, you know. They can definitely do like, for instance, pressure to the LFO or filter cutoff, things like that. But has anybody tried routing a lot of automation into their EMAX and to varying degrees of, you know, how well that works?
Yes. And sending like a curve of control voltage, I'm sorry, of like MIDI controllers or pitch bend or something like where this is bringing up the filter and across several MIDI channels, it does work. It does kind of like skip a little bit, like you can have, because it's only got 8-note polyphonic, you can be sending 8 MIDI channels at it and everybody's going chatter, chatter, chatter. It will work. It will do that because it functions within, I think MIDI is 28K baud or something, is bloody awful, but it works and it's solid. When you are throwing controllers into it, I think I could get 2 to 4, depending on how intense the actual controller information is. And I'm talking streams like sending 128th note curvatures or 164th note curvatures in there so you can get a smooth stream. That is one issue with it, is that you do hear the stepping of it. But a wonderful thing is if you're sending like a controller information that is to the filter, that is a 16th, you hear it step, but that's kind of fantastic. It's got the rock. Here's D finally. Lily, I keep seeing your hand come and go.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really punk rock about the EMAX. I don't know a whole lot about synthesizers, but I've been around them for a long time. And there are a lot of little tricks you can do because I know those things from the 80s, they can't handle much. But with some of these new machines, they'll create subsamples so you can almost plug it in as MIDI if you have the sounds you want already on those machines. And you know, kind of hack it a little bit, if that makes any type of sense.
Can you do that on the EMAX? If so, how?
The EMAX 2, you definitely can. You just have to buy other inputs.
Okay. Thanks. I might, if we're sort of like, I guess it's okay. We're starting to like spiral because this, when you talk about this thing, you talk about this thing, and that's fine. So if anybody wants to jump in, that's good. I want to talk about the, actually before I do, Peter during the week sent me these samples, and Peter, thank you again. These are samples that Peter's taken, and they're bloody dope. Some of them are really fucking good, and they're all like clingy, clangy, bangy stuff. And
So-
go sample. Yeah, Peter, talk to me.
I just said I'm so glad you like them. So,
Yeah, no, they're great. They're really good. I've pulled them all down, and I do. And another thing I really want to encourage is everyone to do is, because we can exchange EMAX banks via EMXP, let's build banks and share them with each other. And indeed the rest of the EMAX community. So I want to talk about SUPERMODE, unless anybody wants to keep talking about filtering and stuff, because I have mentioned the amazing ability for the EMAX to basically go into a multi-timbral thing. Here's how you do it. Peter, talk to me.
Oh, I wasn't expecting to be called on so quickly. Yeah, so I think I know I mentioned to you that I was looking at getting an EMAX. I don't currently have one. I have an ESI. I have a couple of E5000s. And I do have some experience with the ESI or with the EMAXs in the past and SP1200. I even have an SP1200 reboot, essentially the ILA S2400. But so I'm kind of looking for my best EMAX option here. And I just got an offer on an EMAX 2 keyboard for 1080.
How much RAM?
Not sure. I guess that's something I do need to check on with that.
Yeah.
Does have the hard drive that they say works well, and a floppy.
Okay.
So I know I would be looking at getting a USB floppy replacement, or maybe doing a hard drive replacement for something that's going to be silent internal. But yeah, I know I'd been thinking original EMAX rack was where I wanted to go, but an EMAX 2 keyboard seems, from what people were saying, it sounds like I could get into a lot of good stuff with that too. So
I
looking for
thank you for this. Just let me know. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, cool. I was wrapping there.
All right, this is good because DJ Loop also asked this question about which EMAX. If your EMAX has got, is it max 8 or 16? It's 8, isn't it? If it's maxed out, I personally think that's a good price. Hunt around on Craigslist and bloody, the usual. The EMAX 2 is a great synth. It's a faster processor. It's got 16 voice polyphony. The thing about the EMAX 2 is it is 16-bit. It doesn't sound as bright as the EMAX. It's softer. And it basically picks up on where the top version of the EMAX left off, because the EMAX, as the versions went on, they were pretty buggy, but that got solved towards the end. One thing I love about the EMAX 2 is that the outputs are polyphonic, that there's 4 groups of outputs, and you can pan within those outputs and you can play chords on those outputs. On the EMAX 1, you can't. On the EMAX 1, each output is monophonic, so it's one sound at a time, one sample at a time, which is limiting. Hi, Hunter. All good. Thanks, mate. Well, we're recording this, so watch it later. We'll miss your face. The thing about the EMAX 2 is it comes standard with SCSI. So you can get a good old zip drive. And you get a zip drive, a SCSI zip drive for your EMAX 2, and then as a regular zip drive, a USB zip drive for your computer. And using EMXP, you go from one to the other. You drop it onto the zip disk, then onto the EMAX. Pull it out of your computer, stick it in the EMAX. The thing is to remember is that the EMAX 2 had an operating system that is not MS-DOS compatible, and the EMAX 1 had an operating system as well that is not MS-DOS compatible or compatible with the EMAX 2. In fact, the different versions of EMAX 1 are not compatible with each other. So if you're looking for a big, beautiful, smooth sound with big, strong, beautiful, bold filters, yes, the EMAX 2 is a great choice. There's more samples and everything else, but remember, you've already got you said you've got an Emulator 5. You've got all.
Yeah, I've got the E5000s, a couple of those, and I have an ESI 4000. So I'm just not sure that the 2 is going to give enough difference to
Yeah.
justify. I'm thinking maybe the original EMAX is where I want to be, but I'm open to thoughts on that.
I'd love to hear what Alex has to say about this.
I I always advise people, and you have an awesome collection, so I'm not trying to in any way, but my thought would be, I always think of it as a sinking ship, and we're trying to write a song as a sinking ship. The water's just, pouring in, and you're trying to plug holes. And so if you have that 5,000, you've already got essentially that EMU digital later era flavor, but the EMAX 1 with those SM filters are just a different breed in terms of the type of flavor you're going to get from any of the emulators and from any of the later stuff that happened too. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you very much. Adam, welcome. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Hi, thank you. As you suggested earlier, to find a new EMAX system, you mentioned Craigslist, and I know there's some other sources out there too. But the EMAX being a 40-year-old piece of electronic equipment, once you acquire something like this, if it's not working according to the advertisement, what do you do with it if you're not comfortable taking it apart and checking it out yourself?
Thank you. There's guys or gals who go on into that thing and they can rip them up. And EMAXs are kind of like old Mustangs or old, you can take bits out of them. Like I used to have 4 EMAXs. Jim has 4 EMAXs. I think one of them was working. I kept my old EMAX for parts. And when it came time to go to the doctor, boom, bada, boom, bada. I want to throw this to Allison. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to pull up some repair persons. Allison, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that. I had mentioned briefly when I joined here this morning that I had purchased a water damaged EMAX rack like 4 weeks ago. And so I'm new to the world of EMAX and I was like, is this thing repairable at all? I have electronics engineering background, so I'm familiar and comfortable getting in, but also like I had no idea about the world of EMAX in terms of repairability. And honestly, like a couple of weekends of just cleaning it with like special, toothbrush and with some distilled water, got all the gunk and grime. It still kind of smells when you turn it on. But there's so many replacement parts like Syntar. I didn't have a Timbral chip, which is a chip allegedly you need to get SCSI working completely. I'm not sure that's true. I've heard mixed responses, but regardless, there's some pretty obscure parts that you can still pick up pretty easily. I put a new display in it. I got a new power supply. And then I got the GoTech system. So like, and a SCSI chip off of eBay for like $18. So like Carl's totally right. You can fix these a lot, or you can get people to help you fix them. And this group here sounds like it's rich with experience on how to do that, but don't be scared if you find a broken one. Like I was super pleased I got this for such a good price, but I had no idea if it was going to work or not.
Allison, thank you. And you're a good friend to have. Alex, talk to me.
So one of the biggest things about any sort of vintage equipment is it's not a bad idea to find a tech in your area, period. Actually owning synthesizers, because things happen. Modern synths break too, or you spill a beer on them, or you drop them in a key cracks and you just, it is fixable, but I'm always surprised by how many more techs are in people's areas than they think before they've gone looking for them. So just in general, it's not a bad idea. But here's the reason why an EMAX 1 or 2 are so great is it was before EMU moved to surface mount technology with the Proteuses and the Emulator 4. So Emulator 4 and on is surface mount technology, which isn't inherently bad, but it does make it a lot harder to fix. And to Allison's point, the parts are readily available for EMAXs and EMAX 2s. And through-hole means that it's like a chip on a board, and a lot of times if you need to replace a chip, it's as easy as getting an EEPROM puller for like $6 off of Amazon, yoiking that bad boy out and putting a new one in, and then it can work. And like you said, with a toothbrush and some distilled water, sometimes this just get some dust off a trace or something. They were meant to be repaired from this era. Emulator 4 and on, so around like the mid 90s, early 90s, somewhere in there, started moving towards the model that we have today, which is if something's not working, you just throw the whole PCB out And that can be rough because obviously you're not going to find, you have to cannibalize another synth or sampler for that. So
Alex, thank you. I really appreciate this. Also, Alison, FYI, Rob is also a black belt in electronics. So it's going to be fun what Mr. Rob has to say. Peter, I'm going to throw it back to you. I am going to circle back to what you had to say. And I'm really glad we're talking about repairs because I've got a lot to say about this. Peter, tell me about how great Rambird is.
Oh, to add anything to my space, it's got to be great. So, Rambird, is clearly awesome. So I 6 years ago during the pandemic, I was able to move to rural South Dakota to be with family. It's great for purchasing a house, not so great for synth repairs. So that's going to be something I need to start taking on more seriously. I do have a probe tester, and I guess if I'm going to look at something for repairability, then I probably need to, I know I need to work on my Andromeda. It's got some sticky stuff. But where's a good place to start if I've tinkered a little with electronics, but want to get into that a little more and take my Rambird further, let it rise like a phoenix if it ever crashes.
Dude, Rob, fill me with your Rambird love.
Well, just answering your earlier question first, Peter. So the ESI series are all VLSI chips designed by EMU. So they're very large scale integration. There's a lot more architecture in the circuitry. All of the TTL logic in there covers all of the different types of digital filter effects, which is very broad. The ESI is very broad in terms of it does formant, it does a lot more than the EMAX 2, right? But as a result of that, it's been engineered correctly to avoid noise and, any kind of harm or anything like that. So what does that mean? It means that you've got a very clean digital signal. Even with those filters, it's clean. If you go back to the EMAX 2, you're dealing with dogs barking, for one thing. You're dealing with the original analog circuit design blended with the digital design, right? So you've got a VCA on its own. You've got a filter, 24-pole filter, which is not variable. It's not, there's nothing to it. It's very simple. And it'll take some time to kind of warm up and get the juices flowing. What that means is you've got more of an analog feel. It's not as good as the EMAX 1, but it's still very similar in that regard. If there was the EMAX 1 and the EMAX 2, they would be far left and the ESI is far right. It's not like the EMAX 2 is very close to the ESI at all. The EMAX 2 is closer to the EMAX 1 in terms of simplicity in the circuit design, the analog and digital components being blended together. And so you're going to get more warmth and grittiness out of the EMAX 2 that you won't get out of the ESI. Even though the ESI has got so many cool filters in it, they rock. You're just not going to get the same analog feel out of the ESI as you will out of the EMAX 2. So good news about the EMAX 2 is, yeah, it's, go buy it in a rack and it saves space, right? I mean, it's still a pretty big unit, but I've had zero electronic issues with my EMAX 2. I think I've had it for 8 years now, and it's never been a problem. And the GoTech in it works every time. So, so long as you don't have it in a, like you're in Dakota area, it's going to be dry weather for the most part. I'm in a high humidity area, which is the worst condition that you can be in for electronics. And so you've always got to have it in an air-conditioned environment with a dehumidifier if possible. So just to keep that moisture out of the capacitors and reduce corrosion and so forth on those boards. But here's the difference. Analog printed circuit boards, the track lengths, the separation of the tracks, the width of the tracks creates some of its own characteristics, especially when it's warming up or getting warm. And if there's any noise generated from those components, that induction back into the printed circuit card creates a ghost. It creates a ghost in the machine. If it's all VLSI, it means it's really tiny TTL logic inside of an IC. They've engineered that to perfection. It's very controlled, extremely high quality. So, they've kind of perfected it. And this is the sweet spot. So EMAX 2 is in that sweet spot edge where there's a lot of capabilities, but you've still got that crazy ghost in the machine element when you turn it on and warm it up. So I'm just giving you a kind of a comparison between the EMAX 2 and the ESI, because I've got both, and I'm not a power user of either of them, but I really do appreciate the distinct difference between the two. Okay.
Thanks, Rob. That was bloody awesome. And everyone, this input's really great. There's like 3 topics going on. Hold on, Peter. I'm just going to... 1, if you've got suggested gear techs who you've worked with and you trust in your area or anywhere, please let me know. And I want to add it to this website because I'm trying to keep this constant. Like, I know so many people with EMAXs. I might be the EMAX pusher guy, and I'm just trying to keep the family together. So the techs are important. 2, if you can fix a computer, you can fix an EMAX. If you can even put a computer together, you can fix an EMAX, because it really is pull that bit out, stick that bit in, the card's fucked, stick that card in, and that chip's fucked, get the fucking chip from that one. I got in LA, I've got EMAXs for $200 that didn't work. And they didn't work because the power was busted. And it cost me $200 to replace the power itself. Or there was something else rudimentary wrong. The disk drive didn't work. It cost me $150 to change the disk drive. Boom. And even if it doesn't work, it's still parts. And the guy that I use in LA, he's a big... He hoards EMAXs and several other bits and pieces as well, just because the parts are the parts are the parts. The EMAX has a self-diagnosis mode in it, and this is from SE bloody thing. And is it Adam? If you ever need discs, let me know, because I can ship you stuff in the mail that's got different operating systems on it. It's called 1.1 or 4, I think. And it's got a self-diagnosis mode on it where it'll go through and it'll say, okay, this filter is out and blah, 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 blah. It's really handy. Coming back to, for Peter and also for DJ Loop, I am really biased towards the EMAX. And I owned an EMAX 2 for a while, and I owned an Emulator 3 for a while. And I regret selling the Emulator 3 because it was a beautiful synth. And I got an Emulator 4, which does sound totally different. And, Rob, hearing you talk, it makes sense why it sounds different. And the Z-plane morphing filters are insane, but they do not compare. For some reason, the Emulator 4 is sitting right here. And I should have an EMAX sitting right here because I never use the Emulator 4. It's a brilliant sampler. It is a brilliance. And you play that thing and it's like, it's fucking Hans Zimmer or Vangelis. In fact, I think Vangelis had a whole bunch of these things. It is a beautiful machine. As soon as you turn it on, it's like, my God, it's so lush. Whereas the EMAX is this gritty fucking piece of shit that develops every single time. And Peter, there's a band that was way before your time called Skinny Puppy. You strike me as someone who's like 22, 23. So there's this form of music called industrial music, way before your time. And all of that shit was done on an EMAX, and the EMAX has got a sound, and I'm in love with that sound, and I've been in love with that sound when I first heard the thing when I was like 15 or something. So my personal thing is a fucking EMAX, and I absolutely agree with Rob that the EMAX, like if you want that sound, there are you can get a DSS-1, a Mirage, an Akai, or like one of the old nine brand Akais, or Akai, or an EMAX. And of all of those pieces of crap, the vastly superior one is the EMAX. Fucking well it is. Although the Akai does stuff that the EMAX doesn't, it's got a faster attack. And that's one thing about the EMAX is that because the envelope generators are analog, if you turn the filter down and the analog filter to max, you can hear it going up to the attack. Like if you listen really carefully, you can hear it reaching its attack. And it's got all of these other quirky bugs on it as well. But that's something I love about the EMAX. It's like this card and this card, like there's 8 cards in it. And the cards are different. You can calibrate them to be the same, or they can be different. Because it's a 40-year-old sampler and it's fucking a piece of shit. And that's what I love about that thing, is that when you're cycling through drums or whatever, boom, it's making all this crazy stuff. That's it. That's all I want to say. We're done. Peter, I need you to take over my life and praise Rambird.
So I guess I appreciate all this info. I just have a couple more questions about EMAXs. Are there different versions of the original EMAX? I know there's the SE, but I think you can load, that's just a software load, right? And you mentioned RAM expansions on the EMAX 2. Is the EMAX all the same RAM for entry level versus, like, is there a larger version? And I know about the mainboard 3 working with SCSI and such, where the other previous ones are either much more difficult or impossible to do SCSI. So I guess that's just my follow-up there.
Yes, and Rob's here, so he can answer that. Alex can also answer that. I'm going to throw it to Rob.
Yeah, so you can upgrade the RAM yourself in the EMAX 2. There's no indication on the front panel, as far as I know. There's nothing that tells you how much RAM it's got in it unless you you start deep diving or open the back cover. So there is some trickery, we call it fuckery, in doing the memory upgrade. There's a process to that, and it's well published. I've never done the memory upgrade. I've always been curious about it because I've read that it can be a little bit tricky.
Are you talking about the EMAX 2 or the EMAX 1?
I'm talking about the EMAX 2.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that I haven't upgraded mine, but you definitely want to ask how much memory it's got. I would like to upgrade mine at some stage if I think it makes sense. I haven't made that decision yet because to me, the memory isn't as important as the functionality of the EMAX 2 itself, if that makes sense.
Thank you. And Alex, you're also welcome to jump in on this point. My understanding is that with the EMAX 1, moving through the different versions of it are just software, I think. So, and the operating systems are all online. I've got them on my EMAX area, and there's other places. But Alex, give us the lowdown.
So I believe there's 5 versions of the EMAX. There's the EMAX, there's the SE. Now, as far as if you can software port SE to the EMAX, I'm not 100% sure about that. You have the Plus. Now, that's the SCSI version. And that, I believe there are significant differences in either the analog board or the CPU board. So it can, depending on what version you have, you may or may not have an easy time converting it to SCSI. Then there's the HD, which is the 20 megabyte version. And I believe that you can expand EMAXs to that. And then there was, if whatever I missed, there's like the SE Plus or the SE HD. I think those are the 5 versions to the thing. And I believe it's the SCSIs that are the ones that are more difficult to modify. At the time, EMU sold retrofit kits. So if you had an EMAX, you could actually buy this kit, or I don't know, whatever, and modify yours. But those are all sold out as far as I'm aware. So it can be more difficult. If SCSI is a thing that you're serious about, then that's something you'd want to wait and actually purchase that unit. But I think as far as the memory and the SE stuff, you should be able to get away with modifying it or loading a different software, something like that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I wonder, is there, just Carl and Alex, I wonder, is there a way to look up the model and the serial number on the back of units to quickly check what they are? Because I just took a picture of the back of my EMAX 2 and it's got a model number 2215, and then it's got a 8-digit serial number, which might just be the production number, but I don't think it is, because that would be like 31 million of them have been made. So I wonder if there's a ready reckoner way of looking up to see what the model and the serial number actually means. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. Alex, before I throw to you, can I throw to Alison? Alison, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, quickly on that, I learned the hard way that, yeah, as some other people have mentioned, there are 3 different revisions of the actual hardware itself inside of an EMAX one. At least, well, I have the rack unit, which is almost the same, except for the front face a little bit. Point is that when I received mine, the mods had already been done. I had a version 2, and version 2 modified or version 3 can be SCSI converted, to my knowledge. This is based off of the service manuals and whatnot. So for anyone looking at these, want a SCSI version, you would want to look to see if you have a 2 that's been modified, or you have the 3. And this is the revision that's printed on the circuit board itself. Mine happened to be revised, and it looked like it was done by the manufacturer, by EMU. It was the same color wires they use, the wrap wire, and it was done well. There's also a document floating around, and I think I've actually found on Carl's page that shows how to modify your own, which works too if you are comfortable cutting traces and soldering wires and things like that. You can make a version 2 into 3. But mine was already done, and at that point you only need a couple chips. It was really easy, so don't let that scare you. Also, worst case scenario, the Gotek works so well, I'm not sure I even need SCSI. I'll probably eat those words later, but they're all usable, I guess, is my point, even if you couldn't get the SCSI version of those.
Thank you, Alison. I'm going to echo what you say, that I question now, do you even need SCSI? Because the Gotek drives are so amazing. And if you got, and you can put the Gotek drives in yourself. I don't, because I'm an idiot when it comes to software or this stuff. Also replacing the screens, replace the screen, because if it ain't fading, it will soon. And there's information about that on the website that I've got up there. Big thanks again to the old Yahoo group who compiled all that information. So getting back to it, the EMAX 2 is fantastic. And I was thinking about this, like if you wanted to cheat, you could get like a bit crusher box, pedal box, and run one of the outputs through a bit crusher just to get that sound. But I got to tell you, man, the EMAX is, oh honey, it is the sound. And like we were talking briefly with DJ Loop yesterday, about how DJ Loop had a SP1200, and the EMAX and the SP1200 are really similar. Like if you want that, what was that band called? Depeche Mode sound, you need an EMAX. I had all this other stuff to say that I can't remember now. Does anybody want to jump in on this, on the topic of repairs? Because I have a question. I have a Gotek drive on 2 of my EMAXs, and when I'm loading up a bank, I have to bend down and look at the little thing and see it. Is there any way for the name of the bank to appear on the screen? Because Alex, you were just mentioning the hard drive the hard drive, the HD operating system version. So if you use the HD operating system with a Gotek drive, can you see that on the screen? Because my issue with the Gotek drive is that if I have a sound called EMAX Sounds, Pete's EMAX samples, and I've busted on over, you know, via EMXP, and there it is, and everybody's happy, and the Ewoks are dancing. Every time I save it, I have to save it back onto that bank name. I can't create a blank bank, or at least I don't know how to. And I don't think I can save onto a different bank name. Does that make sense? And it is one thing about the EMAX with the Gotek that I find really limiting, that one of my EMAXs still has floppies. And Adam, I wanna bust some details on you about floppies in a bit. And that's what I loved about floppies, that you could just interchange them and change them, and you could actually write what's on the floppy. And it was really wonderful. But if I'm missing something where you can actually see on the screen, or you can interchange between different banks and save onto different banks, help. Alex, talk to my face.
I just dropped in the chat here, but samplerzone.com/products/huge display kit with dashes in between each line. It's a $30 part, and it's a big old honkin' window that has the information. So you're not constantly bending down and looking at that little thing and then coming up. So I have it on mine, and it is a game changer as far as making it so that you're not doing a lot of vertical movement while you're messing around with your EMAX. So
How easy is it to put that on there?
I had my tech do it, so I can't speak to that. I think it does require you to cut the EMAX because you got to put it in there. I suppose you could, if you want to be really punk rock about it, you could get some double-sided Velcro if you didn't want to modify your EMAX and just run a wire in or something like that. But yeah, really helpful, very affordable way to make your EMAX feel a little bit more comfortable. Get the best of the nostalgia without all of the headache.
So, thank you very much for that. But what I'm actually talking about is saving, like you might work on a bank. Well, I've done some changes to this bank. Now I want to save it as Pete Samples -2. I know you can do that on the EMAX 2 because it's got better bank file management, but I don't know how to do that on the EMAX. And like I said, if you got a floppy, you just stick it in another floppy. I don't know how to do that on the EMAX. If anybody does know how to do that on the EMAX, I'd love to know. And if anybody doesn't know how to do that on the EMAX, Adam, I want to bust some wisdom on you. So the great thing about, because I know a lot of EMAX users who don't want to go to the USB route, they want to stay old school with the floppy disks. Floppy disks are sexy, but the issue you've got is getting stuff onto the floppy disk. There's two ways of doing that. You can either dump it straight on there via the sample input and actually old school sample it. And there are people who will say that if you sample into it via the jack, the EMAX sounds better. Or you can set it up, do it all in EMXP, like in your software. You set everything up, you make it sound pretty, then you convert it to an EMAX file and send it across. My issue with that is that I have got data glitching in the past. And I found that interesting point. I have to normalize stuff to -3 dB because if it goes to 0, I increase the chances of it distorting. Second interesting thing is that I like to loop stuff in SoundForge, so I just send it across and I don't have to do with looping. But an interesting thing is that the EMAX will not let you loop from the first sample. It will let you loop from the third sample, not the first. And the third sample is the difference between a click and no click. But it does have really good crossfade things, so you can fudge your way around it. If you want to send stuff digitally to the EMAX and you don't have a Gotek drive or a SCSI drive or whatever, you can do a MIDI sample dump. where it will dump the sound across to the EMAX via MIDI. And in order for this to do this, I recommend that you don't go through like a Mark of the Unicorn MIDI thing. If you come straight out of your computer via like a USB MIDI in out, one cable goes to the in, one cable goes to the out, and the EMAX has to establish what's called a handshake, where it is talking and listening to the host device. Don't go through a MIDI through box. And if you do that, EMXP can send samples directly to the EMAX. It takes a little while because it's downloading it via a MIDI cable, which is 28K baud, which means a 2 or 3 second long sample might take 6 or 7 seconds to dump across, but you can do it. And also there's minimal, the distortion, the digital distortion seems to be minimal if I do it like that. But I do everything via the bloody thing, the USB, because I'm a lazy bitch. And also, if you've got a USB drive, you've got to buy a new one every couple of years because they die. Which happened to me recently, that when the EMAX says to me, problem loading disk. Problem loading disk, problem loading disk. It's the worst error in the world. And my Gotek started to do that. And I thought, oh my God, the EMAX is broken. All the Gotek, oh my God. And it turns out it was the USB drive was just going, nah, fuck yeah. And it doesn't like USB 3, it likes USB 2. Just noticed. Oh God. I'm going to shut up now. Does anybody else want to jump in? Please. Does anybody else have any questions or tricks or da-da-da-da-da?
Now, I've just been decoding the matrix on the model numbers for the EMAX 2. And if you go to sample length and you're in stereo mode, 52.4 seconds is indicative of 4 megabyte of sample RAM. So 52.0 is very strong. Oh, that's mono. 52.4 seconds of sample RAM is 4 megabytes in mono mode. And I'm still trying to interpret. I put the decoder in the chat there. That might be helpful, Pete, if you do happen to look for an EMAX 2.
Thank you, Rob. And another thing back to the EMAX 1 versus EMAX 2 is that the EMAX 2 does do stereo samples. And that is really handy. Just for reasons. Okay. Something else I wanted to talk about was SUPERMODE. So SUPERMODE is a thing on the EMAX that will allow the EMAX to be multi-timbral, which is I have my pad sound on channel 1, I have my bass sound on channel 2, and I have my drums on channel 3. And if I send pitch bend or volume or modulation or anything, because they're different MIDI channels, they operate differently. They're completely independent of each other. Here's how you do it. And I'm going to be looking at my EMAX as I say this. So step 1, you're going to go into sequencer setup, and you're going to hit 6, and you're going to hit SUPERMODE on, and you're going to praise Rambird. 2, you're going to go into sequencer setup 1, and normally when you do this, you can only turn on one track at a time, but because SUPERMODE's on, you can turn on all 16 of them. Or you can turn on 8 or whatever it is you want. But we're going to turn on 16 because we're big spenders. And you're going to turn all 16 of them into R for record. Then you are going to hit on the front panel, record, play, stop. Boom, boom, boom. And you are going to record an empty sequence. Then you're going to go into sequencer setup 2, which is back to sequencer setup 1, and assign all of those tracks to M, which stands for mute. So they were on R, you're going to turn them to M, which is mute. Next week, or at some point, I'm going to have a fucking EMAX set up, and I'm going to actually do it like Alex does it, but I'm just such a lazy cunt. I don't fucking do it. You're going to set them up to M for mute. Then you're going to go into number 2, a sequencer setup 2, and from that, which is the track preset, you can assign what sound goes onto what track. And obviously track 1 is MIDI channel 1, track 2 is MIDI channel 2, etc. You can also send controller changes to the EMAX. And you can also be using this same idea to use the EMAX as a sequencer. The EMAX has got a built-in sequencer that is rubbish, like it's a notepad sequencer, but you can actually use it to be really amazingly powerful. And here's the trick. You have to, hold on. You have to assign the sequencer sync to be external. So it's listening to MIDI clock. Then you set up the sequencer like we did just before, super mode on, you turn on all 16 tracks to record, and you hit play from your sequencer, and the EMAX will record all 16 channels, time locked to MIDI control, to MIDI clock. It will take, and remember that the RAM from that bytes out of the RAM sample RAM. And you know, a sequence takes up 510K, but that is also a snare sample, just saying. Actually, that's quite a few snare samples. And if you assign a track, I think it's to mute, it will play it to an external device. So you can have everything set up on the EMAX so it is playing, and obviously because it's now locked to you can change the tempo, and the tempo is going to change. It's all fucking awesome. But if you assign the preset, the track status to mute, it will play it to an external device. So not only will your EMAX play the sounds on it, but you can also have an external device playing the big chunky sounds. It's a cool trick for live. Just saying. And yeah, does anybody want to ask a question about this or anything else? Allison, I want you to bake my brain with the glory of Motherboard.
So, and this is probably showing my limited understanding of how EMAX works since I'm new to it. Do you do all that with one preset, and you have to basically, is preset even the right term? Obviously you want to play multiple samples on different channels, but is that one bank? One preset? Like, what's the level at which
okay, so it's all coming out of the one bank, but I'll have a whole bunch of different presets within that bank. And the great thing about it is that the EMAX can hold 99 presets. It can also hold 99 sequences. And each sequence might be a different sound on a different channel, or a different MIDI channel set. Oh, this one is only MIDI channel 1 through to 4. This one is 13 through to 16. This one is all of them. Or it might, one MIDI channel, one sequencer might have a whole song in it. That's why the EMAX, when you play the demos back, they've got those bitchin' demos. And they fucking are. Come on, man, it's 80s. So the way I will do it is I will say, okay, slap bass, because I like slap bass. Okay? Fuck you. I like slap bass. And I think we need to bring back slap bass. We'll be on one MIDI channel. And then I'm going to...
hits.
What?
And orchestra
hits. Fucking A. Then I'll have me orchestra hits on MIDI channel 2. And then I'll have Tyne. So if you... What the fuck is with Tyne? I'll have Tyne on MIDI channel 3. And then I'll have the beautiful SP12 or SP1200 or Drumulator on preset 3. And then on preset 4, there'll be the drums. And the great thing about that is that you might say, well, so I've got the kick on C, snare on D, hats on, da-da-da-da-da-da. But you might say, well, because I'm using 16 MIDI channels, I'm going to assign channel 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, all to be playing the same preset. But channel 10 is going to be the kick, channel 11 is going to be the snare, because I might be setting up a filter sweep or something, or a volume or something on each of those MIDI channels. So when I say to channel 10 with the kick drum, filter sweep, kick drum, only the kick drum on 10 will be affected. Although 11's got the same preset, it won't be affected. because it's only listening to 11. Or I might say 12, which is my hi-hat. I've got a MIDI controller that is controlling the panning. Because you can do that because the EMAX is fucking amazing. That means only MIDI channel 12, which has still got the same presets as the other guys, but it's only playing hi-hats. Only that will be moving with the panning. Yeah, it's dope. Then we get into a really interesting area. Does anybody else want to ask a question about, I'm sorry, I'm kind of starting to fall over my words. I need more caffeine. It's only fucking 10 o'clock here. And I went to bloody Bar Sinister last night and I got shit-faced drunk. Give me a break. And when I go there, I just want to say that I spend the night going, oh, that's a DMX. That's a drumulator. Because I know, Alex, you know fucking how it is. Oh, that's a 909. That's a 909 sample because rhythm is a dancer. Yeah, so I'm kickstarting my brain a bit. It's gone. Does anybody have any questions, or because this is such a really powerful thing about the EMAX? I am going to talk about. I see Alex is. Talk to me, Alex.
What was that middle bit you're talking about in the middle of your rant about 3 to 10 seconds in? I knew you had a point, but I don't think you had one because
no,
you were just rambling.
Yeah, I know. Do you mean the actual sample? Hold on, Alex, I'll get to you. I'm just dealing with the other fucking Australian in the room who doesn't fucking listen. Rob, you cunt. So
Yes.
the EMAX will only start sampling, and this is an EMAX 1 thing, at the third sample. You can't, I mean, the loop will only start at the third sample. You can't assign the loop to start at sample number 1, which you'd think you could, but you can't.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Bit of a pain in the bum too. And then the other thing is you set these samples up to be beautiful looping things, but then you crush it down to 8-bit and then you crush it down again to 1560 16K sample. So that whole loop point is gone because it's been mangled because it's gone to 8-bit and it's gone to 16K. Because I do everything in 16K because I'm OG. Yeah, I do need therapy, don't I? Alex, help.
So I'm guilty of thinking pretty monotimbrally when it comes to samplers or anything, even synthesizers. You know, there's all sorts of synths you could do a bunch of layers, except for the D50. My question would be, and this is just an open question to everybody, when it comes to using the sequencer and, you know, a lot of preset definition across a few different instruments, all getting that in one bank on one floppy, whether it be physical or virtual, what is everybody's experience with using, because we've got 8 outputs. So you could be running kick, snare, cymbal, a pad sound, the orchestra hit, et cetera, some slap bass. So is that how you tend to work, Carl, or do you still mostly go to the stereo outputs and kind of use it as like a singular instrument still, because you won't get that panning effect if you're using the multiple outputs, if I'm correct?
Thank you for this question. Before I shoot my mouth off, I want to throw this out because I know Jim has been using EMAXs since the Romans. When they were building the pyramid, Jim was sampling that, I believe. Do you want to jump in? Anybody who wants to talk about this, because this is another area of supreme mind-blowingness of the EMAX, please share. Jim,
I
what are your
like the
thoughts?
individual outs because you know, I would have separate tracks that I would then dump down to an old Tascam reel to reel, and that way I could just, you know, print every track at once.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to go in? Oh, Lilith, talk to me.
Yeah, we were really big fans of collecting samples, and you know, the sequencer was great for switching in between an instrument and the, you know, whatever sample you would like to use. But what was even cooler was running your audio out through just all these crazy homemade, you know, guitar pedals, stuff like that, effect pedals, and that kind of thing. And that's kind of our experience started with the Juno D8, and then he went and bought an EMAX, and it was just a great sampler, and got you out at late at night, you know, clanking metal poles around and stuff to make just the craziest noises.
And I want to thank you for that, because I want to talk. Okay, here we go. All right. I have I have two EMAX keyboards and one EMAX, and they're all EMAX Mount one rack. The two keyboards have 4 outputs, so output 1, 2, 3, and 4 are wired. They come over here into a kind of a patch bay. And the rack has 5 outputs coming out of it. The rack also has a pedal input going into it. That's blah blah blah. If you go into preset definition 2, you get the not only can you tell the sample where it's going to fit on the keyboard, because you can have 128 samples on the keyboard at once. 128 samples in primary alone. Then in secondary, you can have another 128 samples, and every single one of them can have their own analog shaping, their own analog filters, their own analog X, Y, fucking Z going on. Hello? In digital processing, preset definition 2, you say to it, that's where you say to it, the original note is going to be D4, but I'm going to be playing a D3, and it's only, the key range is only going to be from D3 to A3. So it's going to be crunchy, and it's only going to be a fifth. And this is why, I'm going to come back to the outputs in a second. This is why you've got to watch Alan Wilder from Depeche Mode. You've got to watch what that guy did, the way he stacked his sounds up on the EMAX, so the whole thing was there, and he could play the whole, it's fucking genius. So not only can you assign what the highest and lowest key is and what the core key is, but you can also assign on the EMAX 1 and on the EMAX 2 what the output is. And if it's a kick drum, you say it's going to be output 1. That means that kick drum is only ever going to go out output 1. And if I've got a drum kit coming out of the EMAXs, which is always, the kick is always out 1, the snare is always out 2, and the hats are always out 3, and the beloved slap bass is always out 4. Then on one of the other ones, and then I've got to make sure that all the other sounds aren't going out those outputs, because they're going to go out those outputs. And the great thing about doing that is that I can send my one, Peter, thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the Outer Rock, hopefully. Oh, I don't know if it's happening, but I'll let you know. Next Sunday, most likely, we're here again. Get an EMAX 1.
I'm broke.
No, sorry, Pete. Peter wants an EMAX 1. As output 1, you send that out to your to a compressor, and that's going into a pedal or something. A trick there also is to get a DI box if you're using like old school Boss pedals to bring the volume down. And it's also going to bring the impedance down, so you can run it into a, oh, now we've started. Thanks, Rob. It's going to bring the impedance of the EMAX volume down, so you can run it straight into a distortion, whatever it is, phaser, whatever it is. Then you run that back into your desk. Same with the snare, which is dedicated output 2. Same with the hats, the kick. Now, what I'll also do is everything. The thing about the EMAX 1 that fucking bites is that although you've got stuff going to dedicated outputs, it's still going to stay in the stereo field. You can't take them out of the stereo field. And the compromise that I have is that I will take everything that's like the kick, snare, hat, and the bass that's going out output 1, 2, 3, 4. I pan them hard right. Then hard left is going to be all the other stuff, which isn't a good fix, but it's why I have several EMAXs. And also just on that, there's a trick you can do with the EMAX, because if you don't assign the output, it's just going to pick whatever voice card is next. If you have a pad sound, you assign the sound to be all like wavy in the stereo field and that jazz, but you also take the outputs and you run output 1 to some incredible, insane effects unit, like a big reverb. Output 2 goes to a huge chorus. Output 3 goes to a huge delay. So as you're playing those pads, each sound, each note that you're playing is being sent out a different output and out a different delay, out a different effects unit. You will end up with the hugest pad sound you have ever heard in your life, because it's being bussed around the studio randomly, and it's fucking nuts. So in answer to the question, and that's the great thing about the EMAX 2, is because you can say this sound is going to go out output group A, and then within that you can pan it. They're not monophonic outputs. I didn't answer that question beautifully. Rob, can you clean up?
Yeah, I think you did right at the beginning. You said how many you can how many samples you can store at once in the EMAX, and then on the EMAX 2, you can assign to the sub channels, and each sub channel has a return. So basically, if you wire it up correctly, and you have to make sure you got the wiring connected correctly, patch bay can be your best friend underneath the EMAX right now. So each sub, left and right, and there's, A, B, C, and D, I think. It's in the picture. Each one of those, if you wire it up correctly, the ring is going to be either the send or the return. And what that does is it comes back into the EMAX and into the main mix. So everything can be straight out of the main, left and right, but all of your subs are going to go through additional effects units or through modular or whatever you want to route those audio tracks through. So you don't have to have multiple outs through the subs. You can do that, but what you might want to do is also have effects units, to Carl's point, having multiple pedals, and then the return signals are all going back into the main mix, and you can just record off the main outs when you do it in the return circuit approach. Carl's catching flies.
Dude, that's epic. EMAX 1 doesn't do that.
Yeah, so you got to have the right cable pairing, because they're TRS connectors, and you got to have the right cable pairing out. So having a patch bay directly underneath your EMAX 2 is your best friend in order to really get the fuckery happening. And then, you go from there. So it's not like you're limited. I mean, the ESI 2000, 4000 does exactly the same thing, but you kind of don't need it on the ESI because it's got so many assignable effects and filters in the box. It's already done to death. Like, how much more do you really need? Whereas if you want to use analog guitar pedals straight out of the back of the EMAX 2, route it straight back into the master bus. You don't need a mixer. Good to go.
Thank you. Firstly, I just love the way that EMU kept up with fashion. Like, look at the Emulator 2. That just thing says 80s, and the Emulator 1 says late 70s. Emulator 2 just says 80s Supremo. Her name is EMAX, and she dances on the sand, just like that river flowing through a distant land. And then the EMAX comes out, and it's Miami Vice. Thanks for that. Then the EMAX 2 comes out, and it's like, oh, now it's corporate late 80s. Love it. I just want to pick up really quickly on the clock input and clock output. So you can use the clock to, this is an issue I have with the Arpeggiator on the EMAX and the EMAX 2, is that normally an Arpeggiator, when you hit it, it will lock you into the closest 16th or whatever the quantizing point is. Not so with the EMAX. The EMAX, you just jump in the line and it will quantize you on the 16th, even if you were 1/32 or 3 128ths off the beat. You're in 16ths, but you're out of time. You're behind, you're in front. Know what I mean? This is something on the Emulator 4 and on the latter stuff. The Emu 3 was, I think, was the same, but on the you could tell the latter Emu stuff to lock onto that 16, to like sit on it like a dog or whatever animal we're picking on today. If you use the clock, you can use the clock to drive the EMAX, and you can use the EMAX out as a clock translator, because you can go down to 24 ppq. You can set it MIDI time, MIDI clock, and it will convert MIDI clock into 24 ppq. And you can lock the sequencer to analog clock input. Who cares?
Does the EMAX one have clock in and clock out like the
Yes.
EMAX 2? It does.
Yes. I think it has SYNTH. No, it doesn't. That's the Emulator 2 has SYNTH. Yeah. Man, I need me some orchestral hits. I'm telling you. Dude. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Like DJ Loop, I remember you were asking about, is it an EMAX 1 or is it an EMAX 2? How do you feel about that question right now?
I'm listening to what you guys are talking about. I've been kind of gearing towards the 1.
Get the 1.
Sounds like you guys know a lot about the 1. Yeah.
But it's I also think, because like your music, we were talking yesterday how your music is really early 90s influenced. And that's what's great about the 1, is that you can say, okay, well, if you want a nicer sample, you just sample it at 20K. Even 20K sounds fine on the 1. Or 30 whatever, 28K. It's still totally usable. And rhythm is a dancer. Thanks. And yeah, but that's the thing about the EMAX, is that you can go way dark. Yeah.
Seems like you could do a lot more than the SP12.
Oh yeah.
Tinkering around in it.
Oh yeah. Well, like we said yesterday, it doesn't have the brain of the SP12, but you can use your DAW, you can get an Arturia BeatStep Pro, you can get all of this different stuff, or another drum machine, as little Lithy was saying, or Rob was saying, to become that drum brain. And you can get some cheap MIDI thing. And thanks, Alex. What is that? Oh, YouTube. Yeah, you can get some cheap MIDI thing, like, you know, one of the fucking forgotten Rolands of the early 90s that no one really cares about. Oh yeah, good on you. Thank you. So this is, thank you. This is a comparison between the SP1200. We'll try that again without the plus on it, Carl. SP1200 versus the EMAX. Yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah, when it comes to pads, when it comes to panning, when it comes to so many things, and that's what crazy. I actually think the SP1200s is a stripped down version of the EMAX, but they're so much more expensive. It doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. Rob, talk to me.
Yeah, just looking at DJ Loop, you were asking the other day about recording gear, and it looks like so you talked about DAT and stuff like that, and you know, I think Carl's a big fan of, you know, 192 and all the rest of it, 24-bit. But if you look at the EMAX 2 and the EMAX 1's probably similar, they're a filthy, dirty, grungy synthesizer. So I'm just reading here, it says, when you look at dynamic range of your recording device to capture the essential goodness coming out of the back of that unit, not through anything else, just directly out the back of the outputs of the synth, says input dynamic range is greater than 90 dB, output dynamic range greater than 102 dB, nominal frequency response 20 hertz to 19 kilohertz. It doesn't go any higher than that. So if you're recording with really nice fancy digital equipment today, it's kind of overkill. It's not an important match. So you might prefer to maybe look at reel-to-reel or tape recording and do that straight out the back of the EMAX to retain that grunginess and that crunch. Don't make it pretty, but Carl's going to have a different opinion. I was just looking at
No, I actually agree with you. Please keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, look at dynamic range and frequency response matching from the outputs of the synth to an equivalent recording device. And that 24-bit isn't necessary because the EMAX records in 16-bit. It gives you plenty of headroom when setting the analog level going into the EMAX. So there's a few things to look at there, and I just was picking up on what you were asking about the other day, DJ Loop, about what's the best recording device and how going into the DAW doesn't necessarily get you that same feel. And I'm totally with you on that. So
Yes, and option B, VHS tape. Because I was thinking about what you were asking yesterday. So we were talking about alternatives to, to keep that original sound by going down to something else, instead of just going for your DAW. And I was thinking, I don't think I answered your question. VHS. VHS is that thick. It's got correct me if I'm wrong, but it's got a higher fidelity and it's got to be good VHS tape with a good VHS machine. They sound fucking awesome.
yeah,
and you can saturate it.
Yeah, don't use Dolby. Switch Dolby off, and also auto gain level, switch that off as well.
Yeah.
Just get the full quiets and the full highs at that really broad dynamic range and intensity. That's kind of capturing the goodness. It's not compressing it at all.
Brilliant. Lithi, talk to me.
And be careful. I came up in a place where all our speakers were bought from thrift stores, and we blow them every week with the EMAX just because it's, so use it on some nice studio speakers that are guaranteed, because you will blow your grandmama's speakers.
Thank you. And also on that, the EMAX puts out some ripping low end. So be very aware of the low end. And that's whenever I send something across to the EMAX, I always put a high pass filter at 50 cycles to get rid of the rumble. Because more often or not, you're going to play that an octave lower. So what was 50 cycles is now 25 cycles. An octave below that, it's now 12.5 cycles. And if it's there, the EMAX will play it. So if the sound's going to be like an orchestral hit, I might even put a high pass at, cut out everything below 100 cycles, 100 hertz, just so it's clean. Because yet another thing I really wish the EMAX had was a high pass filter. Because the low pass is bitching, but if it had a high pass, that would be,
So that's where mapping those that part of the sample key bed to one of the sub outs, so you can treat that as bass frequency and process it as bass frequencies. That's really cool. And don't go through the main mix, because then you're making it harder on yourself to EQ it and mix it later.
Yeah, that's a great point. And also, DJ Loop, we were just briefly talking about taking the different outputs, sending them off, getting them processed, bringing them back into the desk. Because like what I do and what a lot of us do, because we're spoiled by digital technology, is we'll print it down, we'll dedicate it to tape, each track, each stem, then we'll fix it up in the DAW, then we render it on the DAW. So we have control. And maybe that's why a lot of modern music is kind of lacking that old sparky, crunchy sexiness, is because there was no mix. The risk of the mixing desk has been removed. With an EMAX, if you say the kick is going out there and it is dedicated coming into this channel on the desk and it can be treated accordingly, it's a rock and roll mix. So you do have more, and your desk's got a high pass filter. Boom. Yeah, man. Thanks. Oh, Alex, hit me.
I wanted to ask you, DJ Loop Beats, what the original question was, since I wasn't here last week. That way, because I want to jump in, but I want to make sure I'm answering actually the question and not just kind of going off on a tangent.
The question was trying to figure out which was a better purchase at this time, was either the 1 or the 2, and kind of the differences, which made them. I know the 16 and the 12 is a different, but whatever other options made that 2 appealing towards
Yeah, Alex, I was answering DJ's question about the DAT versus multi versus DAW.
Yeah,
So
Rob was answering a question that I asked about because I had seen Peter had a DAT machine in his studio, and I was curious because I've been printing to the DAW, but I wanted something else that I could print to before going to the DAW. And I was asking, was it a DAT player a better option than the Lisa's Masterlink? Because I never had an experience with the Masterlink, so I was just curious if anybody. And then I was kind of from the answer of the question, it was kind of more just use something, whichever one you could find out.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's sort of like what flavor you're trying to get as an additional spice onto a drum track or something like that. Is that correct?
Or the whole mix.
Or the whole mix, so going stereo into it.
Yeah, pretty much turning the 2-track to something else besides going back into the DAW.
Right. So the best option I would think would be something like a Tascam Portastudio or something like that, because you can get them very affordably. And like Rob was saying, turning the Dolby or the noise suppression off. Sometimes that's cool too. I mean, that's what we love about the EMAX. One is it's a 12-bit sampler, but it's kind of a lie because it's stored in 8. And that companding, where it's compressed and then expanded again, is a big part of how it changes a sound. So when you're talking about like what's that magic of the SP1200, a big part of it is that if you take a drum sample and you just play it back in your DAW, right? It's just super clean, whatever the dynamic range is. But if you have it in an SP1200, it's going to get compressed, saved to memory, and then expanded again later. So there's 2 steps of dynamic processing, plus the gritty artifacts you get from losing all of those bits. So it's going to be much more upfront and then counterintuitively also punchier, right? And Carl was right to point out that we have an analog VCA on the EMAX. So what that means is if you're using, or analog envelopes, I should say. So if the cutoff is low or something like that, it's actually going to soften the front end, which depending on what type of instrument you're using, a lot of vintage drum samples or like slap basses can have so much attack compared to like what we're used to with our modern ears where everything's gotten very controlled. We're actually kind of shaving off just the very front end of, a millisecond or 2 from that analog envelope can do quite a lot to, again, add a little bit of magic in. So just some thoughts to add to the discussion. It's different for me when it comes to recording to a DAW. I always go 24-bit. I don't really worry about sample rate. I'm not like some people freak out about that. But what we love about this vintage gear is that it can capture something that it's Carl said earlier in the stream, you can put a bit crusher on something, but the truth is that there's so much more that goes into the actually analog processing of a digital signal in a DAC that's not just bit crushing. There's all sorts of jitter There's optimization. Even the filters that are used are not the typical filters that you would find like in your DAW or even a plugin like Fab Filters Pro Q4, whatever they're up to now. Elliptical filters are a completely different flavor sound wise to something like a typical analog low pass filter. So all of those, they're all little things that, you know, don't justify a vintage purchase, you know, on their own. You don't need to spend a whole lot of money to get a lot of that flavor, but it does sound good.
Right on.
And thank you, Alex. And DJ Loops, this is such a great thing you bring up. I've got to tell you that one of the most a sound that I've never got sick of is a 15K sample on an EMAX played an octave or two lower with a filter. And listening to that filter bite into the grit, the lo-fi sampling grit is just, I will never get sick of that sound. And I can use that sound in cyberpunk, in industrial, in dark ambience, in anything at all. There's just something about, oh God, it's so good. It's so good. And that's another trick as well. Obviously it's the SP1200 trick where you sample something, move it up a fifth, and then you sample it on the EMAX, then play it down a fifth so it's playing it at its original speed. And it's gritty as fuck. I believe the EMAX does, in later versions, it does have the opportunity to change the pitch of sounds, I think. And you praise Rambert indeed. It's so awful, it's fantastic. In digital processing, in the advanced digital processing stuff that's on the SE stuff, I'm pretty sure you can change the pitch. It takes like half an hour to process 3 seconds, but when it's done, it's the most awful sound in the world, and it's great. And by the way, praise Rambird. We're all getting Rambird tattoos after this. I put two, because Alex briefly brought up the SE, the spectral synthesis thing. There's 2 sound libraries in there that I put in the chat. If you take those files, dump them on your little USB key, you can stick them straight into the sampler. And Adam, what you can do is by using EMXP, which I'll put the link in here again, you can pull those files into EMXP. You can pull out the original WAV files, and then you can bust them across to your EMAX via MIDI sample dumping. Unfortunately, you cannot send a bank with all of the information within it, which I think fucking sucks. Oh, see ya, Ivan. See you next week. You can't send a bank with all the loop points and the digital processing and all that stuff, unfortunately. Maybe there's an update coming, who knows, but you can send the raw samples.
Who runs or updates EMXP?
One more time, I'm sorry, I missed you.
EMXP, where did that come from? Who owns it now?
Somebody who needs a fucking medal because they're a legend.
Is it like John Silveria or Ted Summers?
I don't
know. One of those OGs?
Yeah.
I know those names, but I haven't heard from those guys in years.
I don't know. And they're so incredibly brilliantly humble, their names are not here. Yeah. Oh, wow. Hey, they've got a latest update. It's 3.11.5. Didn't know there was an update. Dude, that was last year. This is how behind the times I am. Maybe I should get that. I don't know. But it's such a great piece of software. And if you've got a Mac, get Chicken Translator. That's a guy named Gareth, and he's a trooper. And Chicken Translate goes from a whole different bunch of things into other formats like Kurzweil and Akai and Korg and all sorts of stuff. EMXP does do Akai as well, and it does everything EMU up to the Emulator 3. So that's SP12, SP12, sorry, SP1200, EMAX1, EMAX2, Emulator 1, 2, 3, and something else as well. Brilliant software. And there is actually a device you can get called the eMuser. That's a USB device that will go from your computer to the to that little socket.
RS-242.
That's the one. Thank you. Where you can go to that via USB, but I think that also only dumps samples and not actual bank files. And I actually have one. I know the guy who invented it. He's in Australia. And he I don't know if it sends bank files, but it locks beautifully with EMXP. DJ Loops, talk to me. What's going on?
What was the big difference between the EMAX and the emulators?
So
I get those confused.
Alex, if you could, you'd be the historian.
The original Emulator 1, I want to say, came out in about 1981. And it was very primitive. Like, so if I believe I'm getting this correct, but if you hit a note, you're sort of stuck going the whole way through that note, almost like a mellotron. And the analog filter didn't have resonance to it at all. It was just there to sort of tame those gritty aliasing frequencies you would get. So the real classic emulator would have been 84, and that's the Emulator 2, and that's kind of the holy grail $5,000+ instruments. It was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and it was, I want to say, 12-bit companded down to 8-bit in memory as well. So the Emulator 2 and the EMAX 1 are kind of siblings, where the EMAX was the EMU all of a sudden had to compete with the Ensoniq Mirage, which was very affordable, made their instrument look very expensive. And so they wanted something to compete with. But the beautiful thing about the EMAX is, well, I could go on forever about this stuff, so I'll try to truncate my thoughts here. The EMAX ends up kind of having the most flavor of the whole family of EMU instruments because of those places they decided to pull back. They also implemented a lot of really cool stuff like the chorus feature where it layers 4 voices on top of each other. It's just so many brilliant things they did with the EMAX 1. Then there was a sort of an arms race, like who was going to get to CD quality audio sampling first. And EMU got there with the Emulator 3, which Carl used to have, and that would have been around 1989, I want to say. And the EMAX 2 is sort of the same, is a ported down version of the software of the Emulator 3. So sorry. So the Emulator 3 still has analog filters and it's stereo and it's got 16-bit, so CD quality. And so that was incredible for the time, but they didn't really sell that many of them. And there is something to be said about like once you're like it's such a high fidelity machine, and Carl will be able to speak to this better than I can because I've never owned one. But my impression is that it's such a high fidelity machine that sometimes you're almost losing what we love about vintage samplers in the first place, which is that it has that character. So the EMAX 2, the cut down version, no longer has the analog filters, but they've got good digital filters. And it's also got more of that funk, that flavor that, you know, nowadays at the time would have been seen as it doesn't sound quite as good as the Emulator 3. It's like the great value version of it. But for the average person today, especially coming from the perspective of like, oh, I'm so bored of like the ultra clean DAW VST contact sort of sound, the EMAX 1 and 2 end up being really great options. Then we get to the Emulator 3 rack mount version, which loses the analog filters. And then kind of every emulator Proteus after that, we're all kind of in the same sort of architecture under the hood, which is the Morpheus Z-plane filters are in it, which are super complicated. 3D space filters are crazy to me, and I don't understand why they're not, like, I certainly don't understand them. I don't understand a lot about this stuff. I'm an EMAX neophyte. But yeah, that's a general timeline of how these instruments came out. If I answered the question, I don't know if I did.
Thank you.
Brilliant, Alex, man. Thank you so much. It's great having you here, dude. That's brilliant. Yeah, totally. This is such an interesting thing because it's always people are asking, do I get an EMAX 1 or do I get an EMAX 2? And, you know, Rob, I really thank you for what you said today because it's put into perspective why they kind of sound the same but different. And I love the thought of it being an arms race to CD quality. Yeah, I don't know. I've just kept the EMAXs because it's what I love. They seem to work. Lily, Lithy, what are you thinking?
Yeah, Alex, it's awesome to have you here. I see you sometimes, and you're just a cool acid rocker. I love some of the stuff you do, man. Anyway, the Nintendo Core kids nowadays, they've gotten a hold of these these softwares, Brett had the software with all the emu stations and all of that. And so these kids are getting these tiny Android based computers and just running them off of that. It doesn't sound, like you would love it to, but man, the kids love doing that. And I've heard some badass Nintendo Core on that kind of stuff.
That's very excellent. Thanks, man. And that's the great thing again about the EMAX is that it's kind of the generation time of the Nintendo, so you're getting that crunch.
Yes.
One thing we haven't talked about today that Alex briefly brought up was SE Spectral Synthesis. And I put 2 sound libraries in there of SE for that to muck around with. And I think my SE and multiply, transform, that one, I have to mess with these guys more. And I said last week I do it, and I haven't done it because I'm a liar. But the Spectral Synthesis is really interesting because it's really mega hit or miss. And those sounds on that library are really pretty sounds. And the trick I found is that you have to start with X seconds of nothing. So you set you tell it to sample 4 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, 5 seconds, whatever it is. Then you take that naked empty sample into into digital processing. Then you go into the advanced options and you select SE Synthesis, and using the fader, your little slidey slide, you go through and you shape what you want it to look like. And I mentioned this last week. I highly advise that you make sure your slide has got a bit of detox in it because you don't want to go, maybe that would be interesting. Who knows? Because I find that my slider gets a bit dirty and dusty, LA and all that. But then it will calculate and interpolate these nice, pretty Fairlight-esque things that you've done because it was trying to be a Fairlight, as you know. And you can get some really interesting things, but it takes a while. Like it can take 15, 30 minutes. Yeah. And then you loop it. And you treat it like a sample. And sometimes you'll come up with something that it sounds like a synclavier. It's got that, wow, beautiful, high, wonderful harmonics thing going on. And sometimes it's like, nah, that sucks. But yeah, play with it. Does anybody else have anything they want to bring in at this stage? We could stop the stream and just hang back here and chat. And thank you also for letting me stream this. Mac didn't make it in, which sucks. Mac's in England. Oh yeah, can't play anti-sequences, dude. If anybody else wants to throw in, or I might stop the stream and we hang back here and talk about stuff. And thank you for letting me record this because the purpose is there was a whole bunch of other people who wanted to jump in, but they couldn't for whatever reason. Does anybody have any questions? Or thanks, Alex, you're a ledge. See you Wednesday night. And I will take the opportunity very quickly. So we will all be hanging out again on Alex's page, which is Vulture Culture, right there. Follow that. It's a brilliant synth community. And Alex, thank you for taking the time to build that community on a Wednesday night. And we talk about synths. and what you do with synths really inspires me to push forward. Yeah. And it inspired me to go, I want to take Pete's samples that he threw those samples in there before, create some sound banks with them and share them with the EMAX family. Because what you were doing with that distorted reality stuff, dude.
And Alex is going to resample all of Donkey Kong King Country into his EMAX and share it as well. That's Alex.
Fantastic.
We
Good.
do have the samples.
Yeah.
That is what I need.
Well, it was funny that when Peter, and here's Peter's samples again, just sharing it with you. And before you bail today from the Zoom, remember to copy everything in the chat and pull it into your computer and grab those 2 files that got uploaded from me. There's a whole bunch of links in there that are really helpful. It's so funny that when Peter sent me those samples, I was so excited to get someone else's samples that I was thinking, the last thing I need in the whole wide world is more samples right now. I've got gigs and gigs and gigs and gigs of EMAX samples, considering that each file is like 1 meg. I don't know. It's good fun. Does anybody have any last questions, last thoughts? Does anybody want to talk DJ Loop into getting an EMAX 1 before we leave? Yeah. All right. I'm going to kill the stream, and then we're just going to hang back here and have a chat-a-rooney. We're probably going to do this next week. I'd like to do this every week because I think there's so much to get through in this thing. So we're going to raid. Diana, if you're there, let's raid to MTV TV. Otherwise, thank you. And like I said, we're just going to hang back here and chat.
Yeah, and if you don't do a transform multiplication by next Sunday, we're all going to send you poop in the mail, Carl.
Do that.